Hello ladies, and welcome to our very first Murder Mystery Book Club. I'm your host tonight, Katy Hannah, and I will also be your very first victim. If you're watching this, then that means that I am gone and you are the only ones who can figure out what happened to me. As part of my last will and testament, I want nothing more than to lead one last book club with you all, my friends, and my murderer. Who seriously should help my mom figure out how to spruce up the wallpaper in the room you're all sitting in. If you aren't already, please enjoy some of the refreshments that I procured for your pleasure tonight. There are some Walker's biscuits, there's some wine, which I'm sure my mother and Lori and Lalisa have already gotten very much into. Sit down and relax a bit. I am very sorry that we don't have any Girl Scout cookies for your pleasure, you know, no Samoas or anything. Just some Walkers, and I hope you enjoy them. Now, I need to give you a little bit of an introduction to our short 455-page mystery novel. Written by J.K. Rowling, author of the wildly successful Harry Potter series and the less successful novel The Casual Vacancy, The Cuckoo's Calling was originally published anonymously by the author under the pseudonym Robert Galbraith. In the time prior to Rowling being outed as the reality behind the elusive and reclusive Galbraith, the novel sold only 8,500 copies across all formats, including hard copy as well as digital download. While the book received positive critical and reader feedback alike, the revelation that Rowling was the author sent sales soaring 507,000% on Amazon.com alone. Despite the overnight success of The Cuckoo's Calling, J.K. Rowling actually donates all of the money she receives in royalties from the book to ABF, the Soldiers' Charity. I assume because she's running out of room from the barrels of money she already earned from the Harry Potter series. It seems that ABF, the Soldiers' Charity, is going to be adding a couple more barrels of money to their own collection, as it was just announced that Galbraith's next book, The Silkworm, is coming out on June 19th of this year. This second installment of what I assume will become a series sees Cormoran Strike, our detective, solving the gruesome murder of novelist Owen Quine, a man who wrote his own novel depicting poisonous pen portraits of everyone he knows, which, if published, will ruin their lives. Of course, Strike will be solving the crime with his trusty sidekick and secretary, Robin Ellicott, which actually leads me to my first discussion question of the evening. So what do you all think about Robin? Do you think that her relationship with Strike is going to affect her relationship with her fiancé Matthew? How do you think the relationships are going to develop with Robin and Strike? And also, what do you think her character brings to the book? Adhering to the common Good Girl Friday trope of classical detective novels, I hope you find Robin's role in the book as fascinating as I do. Doubtless my murderer finds the subject fascinating, as I'm sure she spent as much time as Robin Googling ways to get away with murder. I suspect she's always secretly fancied herself a bit of a hidden genius when it comes to detecting. And crime. Perhaps, like our villain John Bristow, she's done this before. Can you think of anyone in our little group who's had anyone around them mysteriously disappear? Our second question of the evening is on the subject of fame. A subject by which I am sure our murderer, despite her benevolent facade and motherly appearance, is fascinated by. Anyway, this next question pertains to how you, the reader, were affected by the knowledge that J.K. Rowling penned this novel. Would you have approached it differently if you had read the book when you thought it was written by some random guy named Robert Galbraith? Additionally, how did you look at how fame was depicted in the book? How did you analyze how fame was depicted in the book, with the knowledge that it was written by somebody who is an insider in the world of the rich and famous? Speaking of Rowling, what's with all the C-titled book names? The Casual Vacancy, The Cuckoo's Calling. kind of weird, right? Speaking of titles, though, this does lead us to our next question. What did you think of the title of the book? Did it evoke any emotional response different from the beginning when you hadn't read it to the end when you were looking back at it? One internet user pointed out that her fiancé believed, upon seeing the cover of the book, that she was reading a cuckold-themed murder novel because of the title. The Cuckoo, cuckold, it's interesting. Setting and environment play a very important role in how the story progresses. If you look at the apartment from which Lula Landry fell to the cobblestones that worsened Strike's limp, London is actually one of the story's main characters. For those of you who have been to London, especially my murderer, did the book bring back any memories of your time there? For those of you who have traveled elsewhere, how would it have changed the story, for instance, if the book was set in Antwerp, or in New York City, or Luxembourg City, or Paris? What about if it was set in Leesburg? Now that we finished the discussion portion of our evening, let's figure out who murdered me. Let's review the clues. We know that my murderer is in this book club. We know that my murderer enjoys decorating. We suspect that my murderer enjoys wine. I did give you a hint that our murderer enjoys a good Girl Scout cookie, specifically Samoa's. We have established that she does have a very benevolent facade and perhaps would not be the person you would first suspect of murder. We established that my murderer enjoys mystery novels and detective stories. Our murderer is quite the traveler. I have listed some of the places that she's been only in the past few years. For a couple extra hints about our murderer, if you need them, I would like to point out the fact that the industrial setting of London may have bothered our plant-loving murderer a little bit the couple times that she visited there. While our murderer is undoubtedly evil, I doubt that she is as evil as one of her terribly misanthropic cats. If you have figured it out, congratulations! You know that Lori is my murderer. As for motive, we may never know why she did it. Perhaps it's my terrible grammar, or maybe she wanted to have a hostile takeover of this book club because she really liked the book. Who knows? But, as Cormoran Strike said, laymen, in his experience, were obsessed with motive. Opportunity is what tops the professionals list. Does anyone know where Lori was earlier today? 'Cause I do. She was killing me. Thank you all for joining me for the very first annual Murder Mystery Book Club, featuring The Cuckoo's Calling by Robert Galbraith. Read his or her next book coming out in the summer. Tip your waitresses.